Welcome to the Business of Hearing podcast, the number one marketing and practice growth podcast for high-performing private practice hearing care leaders. It's Friday, and this is my end-of-week roundup of what's top of mind after 7 days of helping some of the world's best private practices to attract high-quality patients, fight the evil forces of manufacturer-owned chains, and be impossible to compete with. My name's Ollie Luke. Pull up a chair, pour yourself a drink, and let's have a chat. Interesting times, my friends. Interesting times, because Apple have officially entered the hearing aid market. And we've been talking about this for a long time, because back in March 2024, I stumbled upon a tweet by a guy called Mark Gurman. And Mark is the correspondent of Bloomberg, and he's got a reputation and a history for sharing insights into what Apple are planning. And he shared, as part of the iOS 18 update, Apple were working on something called their hearing aid mode, basic hearing aid functionality that would be available as part of the widely sold and the most popular earphones on the market, the AirPods. Now, the interesting thing about it, when I discovered this on a tweet initially, was it was very hidden information. It was one of the many line items of the things that Apple were planning to do. And it was under all the big things that we're now seeing, like their launch into AI and how that's going to result in the Apple Intelligence reaching the market. So it was kind of low down on the list. And it was only the fact it was keyword rich, and I'd searched the keyword that resulted in it finding my feed. And since then, I've been on a bit of a binge of learning everything about Mark Gurman, how many of his predictions have been correct, everything I could about Apple, reading the forums to learn, like, what could this mean? What would hearing aid mode look like? How would it fit into their current infrastructure? And I've kind of got a little bit geeked out over the year. But as I kind of started to understand what this could look like, what I believe it would look like, and based on the predictions I was reading and how this would infiltrate the market, I moved pretty quickly on this. We held meetings with our inner circle members to share, based on this, we think this is coming later this year or early next year, and here's what it's going to mean for the industry. We had team meetings where we brought our team together to get a game plan based on, if this does happen, let's do the work now to ensure that we've got evidence we can look back on, that our members are in prime position for when this news finally does land. And even on April 11, 2024, I released a public podcast sharing that Apple are going to do this, in my opinion, and here's what it's going to mean for the industry, and here's what you need to do as a practice now to be prepared. Yet yesterday, Apple did exactly what was predicted, right? They officially announced that they were introducing hearing aid related features as part of their iOS 18 update. What it's going to mean is the individual has the ability to conduct a hearing test themselves with nothing more but their AirPods and their iPad or iPhone. It means they're going to have hearing aid capabilities, which means that based on the outcome of their hearing tests, their AirPods are going to be programmed to help them in certain environments in certain ways. And there's a lot of question marks over this, and that's going to be packaged as part of an over-the-counter hearing aid. So I've been following this super closely over the past several months. I've been deep in the forums, and I've got a lot of opinions to share. And this message that I'm about to share with you is for private practice leaders that are wondering what this means, whether this is good news, whether this is bad news, and some of the question marks in the middle. I've got a lot of thoughts around this, the good, the bad, and the ugly for sure. And let's jump into this, because I think the headline at the top is great long-term news, messy short-term news. And let's go through this, because look, let's start with a positive, because there's a big dose of positivity here. If somebody could wave a magic wand, if a genie popped out of a little bottle, vase, I can't, the names escape me, and said, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Hearing Care, I have one wish. What could you do to make our industry better? There's not an awful lot we could do more than what Apple are doing for us right now. Because the challenge we've had for so long, right, is people regularly have their eyes tested, their teeth checked, an annual physical, but not enough people prioritize their hearing health, even though we know the statistics are somewhat crazy in terms of the impacts of hearing loss and the knock-on effects that has in wider areas of their life. What we've got here is one of the most influential, respected, and let's be honest, cool tech brands in the world joining the message. They're finally getting it. The world is finally getting it because Apple are now the driving force that are telling users, not enough people give consideration to their hearing health. You should test your hearing more often and you should get help. Better hearing is not something that should have a stigma. You should address a hearing challenge and be able to hear to your best abilities. We now as an industry have Apple's $1 billion of advertising money behind that message. This is wonderful news, right? We know we're always addressing the outdated stigma that exists in some people's mind that prevents them from moving forward with treatment. People don't want to wear hearing aids. It's a difficult, that's got on a lot of emotional baggage to becoming a hearing aid wearer. What we now have is the coolest tech brand in the world telling people that hearing better, wearing something in or on your ears in order to help with amplification is a cool thing to do. It's the right thing to do. It's the great thing to do. I think that's going to do a huge thing for the stigma and normalize fixing hearing challenges. I think we couldn't ask for anything better than what we've got right now in terms of that brand promoting that message with the reputation and prestige this brand has. Like this is phenomenal for the treatment of hearing loss and the normalizing of hearing loss. We couldn't ask for anything better. So that's the big thing that we hold up as a positive. Underneath it, there's question marks and potential negativity. And there's a few things that I'm super wary of right now. Here's the first one. If you've read what Apple have called their new hearing aid mode and hearing aid feature, it's suspicious. And what I mean by that is it's technically that the way they're classing it, and if you read their website, it says clinical grade hearing aid. I don't like that. And the reason I don't like it is if you define what clinical grade means, it means technology and sensors that are similar to those used by hospitals and healthcare professionals. That feels very suspicious to me. I don't like the confusion that would cause to somebody that is in the market that has a low level of awareness of the options available about the difference between what Apple are offering and what prescription hearing aids look like. Clinical grade, I don't like that terminology. There's another big thing I don't like. If you go and check out their existing page that promotes what this is, there is no mention in any area of over-the-counter or OTC. And they are awaiting approval from the FDA. So I'm going to assume the rules will change once that's in place. Maybe they can't say it now, and that's probably the case. But I'm going to really hope right now that when that approval does come, and I assume it will come, that they're going to have to get a lot more stringent on the way they position and package and explain what these are. Because the level of confusion between what Apple are promoting and what prescription hearing aid technology looks like, right now the lines are very blurred based on Apple's messaging, and that needs to be very clearly defined, or we've got an issue. And that's naturally the job of somebody far more powerful than us to define what that is. And we've just got to hope the deep pockets and influence of somebody like Apple doesn't break those key things, because this is going to cause a lot of confusion. And as we said, great long-term focus as an industry, messy short-term. And the messy short-term is educating patients to understand what this is not, and the key differences between what they can get from their AirPods and what they can get from prescription hearing technology. The second big thing is this education gap that exists. And in 2022, when OTC finally launched, when they got their FDA approval, we've seen a number of media headlines that finally said hearing aids, or cheap hearing aids, low-cost hearing aids, affordable, I think was the main term used, affordable hearing aids are finally here. It created immense confusion. So patients that have just purchased hearing aids, all of a sudden, they pick up the newspaper the next day and it's like affordable hearing aids are finally here. No longer do you need to go and see those evil hearing care professionals. Like that was the narrative it felt like. And it caused a huge amount of confusion and buyer's remorse. You then had people that were ready to treat their hearing loss. This entered the market, and then they take a few step backs to reassess their options. You had the ones that are in the journey of assessing a hearing challenge that now see OTC as the easy thing to go to rather than the traditional route of prescription hearing aid technology. Causes a lot of confusion. And the job of you as a practice had to be to pick up the pieces post-confusion, or do a better job at educating the community, patients, and physicians on how to help themselves or help their patients to navigate this and understand exactly what it means. But like two big areas of confusion around the messaging of what the hearing aid features are through Apple, the education gap on what this is in comparison to prescription hearing technology, and understanding and demystifying all the headlines that will naturally come, because Apple spend approximately $1.8 billion a year on advertising based on my research. Like, they're going to go very, very big on this message. Here's the third thing about this that truly stands out. The fact that individuals can now conduct a simple hearing test themselves through their iPhone or iPad and AirPods, I think is going to drastically change the way that we as an industry need to package and position our hearing tests. Because the playing field's completely changed, right? If you as a practice offer free hearing tests, free basic pure tone hearing evaluations, then you are doing not too much different in the consumer's mind to what they can do themselves for free through their AirPods and iPad or iPhone, right? Which means that it's not as attractive to come to you. Like traditionally, if they wanted a hearing test, they needed to come to someone like you. The online ones are pretty terrible. Apple's will be probably quite good and deliver a result at the end that's plotted on a graph. So like the benefit to come to you isn't there. That gap is going to get very big, and I think there's going to be a very messy middle. The difference between what somebody could get for a free hearing test in the comfort of their own home and what somebody would want to pay money for, like it needs to be polar opposite. And I think the big thing as an industry is free hearing tests are no longer going to be relevant. People can do that themselves. You need to charge for a hearing test, but charge because you're doing significantly more than what the consumer can do themselves. I think that gap's going to get wide. And the many brands right now that offer low cost or free hearing tests that are sat in that market, that's going to be very, very difficult to create a proposition of why you versus what they can get through their iPhone. I think that's going to get very messy. As a private practice, step away from that chaos, price your hearing tests at a more premium rate, and know that through that, you can build the time and value onto your schedule to do significantly more than what the patient or individual or user can do themselves through their iPhone. So there's a lot going on right now. Your job is education, education, education. Educate your patients, educate your community, educate your physicians, let them know what this is and what this is not. Your job is not to play defense right now. And if you're playing defense against Apple and you're saying Apple's bad, we're right, you're going to look like you've got something to hide. Your job needs to be to celebrate the awareness that this brings for hearing healthcare, but remind that there's a big difference between what this is and what you do. And creating that gap and widening it as much as possible is super key. And this always comes down to, it's not the widget, it's you and the care. And we need to create a definition between the widgets because they're significantly different as well. But education is your job. There's a lot going on right now. This is going to move quick. I'm hearing this could happen as soon as next week, based on the new iPhone 16 launching on September 20. Is this going to be ready for them through the existing AirPods that many people have in their pockets? Is this going to be in fall, which is a wide period with a lot of question marks? There's going to be a lot that moves very, very quickly around this. But your job is educate, 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 educate with awareness of the positive news this is, but knowing you've got to create the gap and the understanding that there's differences. This is the readers compared to the prescription eyeglasses. This is a significant difference, but you have got a lot more people now that are far more conscious of their hearing abilities, their hearing health, will be able to assess their hearing themselves without coming to somebody like you. And it means that future patients will know what their hearing abilities are before they come for a full hearing evaluation through you. They won't be at ground zero. They'll be a little further into that journey. And I think the biggest positive that sits in my mind right now is you and I know that many people believe they have a normal hearing loss, a normal hearing until they come to you and discover the gap between normal and where they currently are. That's going to change because they'll be able to understand this themselves, understand their hearing isn't where it should be based on the hearing test they've done through their iPhone. And then from there, you can pick up the pieces and deal with it in a more proactive manner. So huge amount going on. Educate, educate, educate is your game. Huge amount of positive in this, but also a lot of mess in the short term that needs proactively managing day by day, week by week. That's exactly what we're doing for our inner circle members. And let me just share a few insights here. The majority of our inner circle members have had at least 3 pieces of content around this to absolutely dominate Google right now. Given that we were so ahead of this, there was 2 pieces of content around what this means put onto their website earlier this year. And within 6 hours of this news breaking from Apple, there was another piece of content that was all around newsjacking this opportunity. So staying ahead of the curve is super, super key, and seeing around the corner and being one step ahead is naturally the goal of your marketing company. And if they can't do that, you probably need a better marketing company. But so much opportunity right now, and we're not talking a few hundred visits per month traffic. There's tens of thousands of visits when big brands like this make a lot of noise and continue to make a lot of noise and plow billion-dollar plus advertising budgets into raising awareness for hearing health and hearing abilities. So all roads will always lead to you if you do this well. But huge amount of opportunity, huge amount of short-term mess that's going to require education. But I hope this has been helpful. That's exactly where my head is at right now. And appreciate your time to watch this video or listen to this podcast. Speak to you soon.
And there we have it. Another episode has come to an end, and I have a quick favour to ask. If you have found this helpful, then who do you know who should listen to this podcast? I strongly believe a rising tide lifts all boats, and right now, private practice needs to stick together to fight these big, gormless groups and these manufacturer-owned Goliaths that are looking to take market share from us. Consider who should be listening, pass on the word about the Business of Hearing podcast, and I'll see you again next week.